Hi, I'm Glenn Whipp with the Los Angeles Times. Veep is in the middle HBO comedy series Veep, fourth season, another great year. Joining us today, he plays the character who's clearly the object of envy of everybody on the show. Timothy Simons.
Hey.
Jonah.
How's it
Hi.
going?
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. That is the thing. That's the reason everybody hurls all this abuse toward Jonah. They're jealous.
They're
right?
jealous. I think so. I think that there is, like, looking for justifications into how anybody could live with themselves after being able to seeing their own behavior. I think it was just that thing of, like, whenever he leaves a room, it's like everybody was throwing insults at me because they know that I'm powerful. They know that I'm on the come up. Yeah.
That you will be president in 2026.
That I will actually be president in 2026, and they're just trying to knock me down so that I can't achieve more than they will in that way that they know I will. Does that make sense?
It does.
The sentence didn't make any sense. It's a little bit early.
A little bit.
It's a little bit early
for both of us, but for most people not. But I mean how do you live with yourself? That's really the question every character on Veep. I kind of wonder, how do they live with themselves?
Me personally?
No.
Or no, just any
characters. The actors, you guys are doing a fantastic
job. I don't know. I mean, I think the big part of it is that some of them are stupid, and some of them are a little bit, and some of them are stupid, and some of them are so completely self-involved that they wouldn't ever think to ask themselves the question, am I behaving like a normal human person would? Mm-hmm. So I think that's sort of like, if you never actually have any reflection, it's pretty easy to keep up that kind of behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
And self-involved, but also just on such a treadmill mm-hmm. that there really is no time for reflection. And maybe for these characters, that's a good thing. Right?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, I remember when we were doing the research for the pilot and we all had gone to DC, we met with a chief of staff who slept with her phone in her hand under her pillow. So her head would be on the pillow and her phone would be in her hand. It is a true 24-hour business. So yeah, there really isn't any time for self-reflection. And I love that everybody on the show is really selfish in their own ways. Like everybody's, even Sam Richardson, who came on this year, who plays Jonah's assistant, is probably the nicest person that exists in the entire Veep universe, but he's kind of selfish in his own way of just assuming that the entire world is bright and sunny. Everybody else only sees shades of gray, or it sees black and white in the horrible negative, and he only sees black and white in the bright and sunny and positive. And I like that he's selfish in that way too.
Yeah, he's kind of a great addition, and that he is unlike the other, and he becomes he gets kind of put Jonah's assistant now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Jonah has someone underneath him.
Yeah,
for once,
and I think I think Jonah understands, as awful as he is, I think that there has been some sort of development of political savviness. I think he understands that it doesn't matter if you need an assistant, you need to be seen having one. Because if you have an assistant, that means you have a certain status and you're so busy that you need even if it's not true, nobody trusts him with any sort of actual responsibility. But he needs an assistant to let other people know that he's important.
Because that perception is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, when the season began, for all the verbal abuse that has been hurled toward Jonah over the years, this season he had to suffer some physical abuse too. Yeah, and generally Patton Oswalt, he comes on a show, I'm really excited. He's been on Justified. He pops up on TV here and there and everywhere, and it's like, cool, Patton Oswalt. He is really playing quite a character on this show, isn't he? He's the vice president's chief of staff. Very hands-on.
Very hands-on. It turns out that he's a serial molester. That's something that you find out over the course of the season. And I remember when they first pitched me that storyline, that when we were starting up rehearsals for season 4, they were like, this is what we have. They actually, the writers told me that when they were when they were throwing out ideas for the season, like, well, what if this happens? And you get notes back and forth, like, oh, that's pretty good. Maybe we can build off that and do that here. And then somebody, I don't know who, threw in Jonah gets molested, and everybody was like, yeah. And then they just, so like, that was settled. That was just in stone. Jonah was going to get molested. That was a really fun storyline to play. Because Jonah is sort of an imperfect victim. Like you have to feel bad for him for what he's going through, but all of his behavior before that leads you to be very conflicted about feeling bad for him, which is just really, I think that's really funny.
Yeah.
And Patton Oswalt was great, and we had to have that sort of like on set negotiation. I don't know if it's like this in your workplace. But every once in a while, I'm learning somebody has to touch your genitals in my workplace.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that goes in yours.
Yeah.
But there's a discussion about it leading up, and it's you're trying to read the other person's face and not just what they're saying. And they're like, okay, like wardrobe asks you if you're going to wear a cup, and then you're like, well, I don't know what the rules are here.
Right.
Because they're all brand new. So eventually we just went like, okay, yeah, just do it. Like I think everybody's just sick of talking about it. Yeah.
So we have day-long seminars to kind of avoid those situations.
Right. And we had week-long rehearsals to make sure it happened.
And in an authentic way.
In an authentic way.
But, but so the wardrobe asking if you wanted a cup, which way did you go on that issue?
I think we just said, like, let's just be grown up about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You caught a lot of flack, though, from your castmates. You did a panel, and you called it your scenes with Patton.
Yeah.
Sex scene, right? And they were
I made that analogy only to say that that I had never had to even be anywhere close to that conversation of I've never been in a sex scene before. And then Julia called me out on the fact, like, you still haven't. And then they started asking me if they think that's what I thought sex was. And as far as my experience goes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't heard anything to the contrary
Right.
thus far. So yeah, but I will say, like, if you're ever in a position to have Patton Oswalt grab you in general, like penis or testicles or buttocks or chest, it's great.
Seize the moment.
Seize that moment.
Whatever he's doing on television next year, we're bringing him in. Just for that recommendation.
He should run your seminars.
Right.
Yeah.
But you said that people, that was the kind of the fun dynamic of it. You have to feel bad for Jonah. I think there are a lot of fans of the show who love Jonah for you make him kind of sympathetic. Kind of. I
mean, like, I try not to just, I feel like that gets boring if you're watching something and somebody's just like, well, this is just a bad, evil, awful person. Like, it's not really very interesting to watch that. And so I think I've tried to humanize him in some ways. And I think the writers have done a really good job bringing in things like seeing glimpses of his clearly awful upbringing and home life, like his pill addicted mother. And I think he references something when they're having that Friday night drinks round table in this last episode or 2 episodes ago, where he talks about, like, it's like hanging out with your dad but fun. Like, there are references to the awful time that he has had growing up. So I think there is something human about him, but I don't personally, I don't ever want to see him be fully, what's the word I'm looking like, I don't ever want anyone to feel fully sympathetic toward him. I don't ever want him to be redeemed in any way.
I don't think it's possible probably for any character on this show to be redeemed.
I don't think
that's
so.
The point, right?
Like that whole idea of, like, by the time somebody could be president, they're just somebody you don't want. It's just somebody you really don't want to be president.
Yeah.
Like, they've already been bought and sold a million times. And I feel like that's like everybody on that show. By the time they have elevated themselves to these positions, even somebody in Jonah's position, it's already done. Mm-hmm. Like, the damage is already done.
I mean, there's for sure one more season after this, right?
Yeah.
and then who knows after that. I mean, have you ever given a thought like how would Veep end? I mean, we've had like these big high-profile Mad Men ended, Breaking Bad last year. How would this show end, do you think?
I don't know. Every time I've tried to guess where every season is going to go, I've been completely wrong.
Yeah.
So I haven't really thought about it.
But it would have to be really like bad, wouldn't it? Just like a or maybe they take it the other way and have some kind of, I don't know.
I don't think
it has
so.
to be
no matter
bad
what
for all
it
the
is, I think it
characters.
will be bad. I have no idea where they're going to go with it, but it couldn't be good. They're not good people. They don't deserve a good ending.
It's like Seinfeld where they all ended up in jail.
Yeah. It has to be something. I feel like people, if they watched our last episode and were like, oh yeah, they really gave it their best at the end of the day. Like I feel like they might feel like the year they might have been cheated a little bit. So I'd love to see it end poorly.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, like poorly, like, whoever it is, like Mike in Power, like that ends poorly. It might not be ending poorly for Mike. That ends poorly for everybody else.
Yeah. Not for Mike.
Mike.
But I mean, has being on this show, you kind of mentioned politics a little bit, has being on this show changed the way you look at our political system at all? Because it's certainly, if you maybe going into the show, I was an agnostic. Now I'm just complete atheist.
I think that I have been a lot more cynical about the process ever since being on the show, especially after meeting and talking to politicians.
They didn't turn you the other way. It was like,
no, they didn't turn me the other way.
We're on the right track.
Yeah, we're definitely on the right track. I think there is like this one, and this has been a phenomenon from the beginning, that every single politician we meet as a cast, as a group, or as an individual, they all think that the show is making fun of everybody else but them. And I think that is, I think that's just fantastic. Like that's the same amount of like that's the same like shield that everybody on the show puts up. Like everybody else around here is terrible, but I'm doing great.
Right.
But no, I think I have become a little bit more cynical about the process. I think I got in trouble one time for making a joke on a red carpet where I was like, "Your vote doesn't matter," and so I think I walked that back.
Yeah.
But I have been in a little bit. I think I've noticed a little bit more when I'm being spun by my own party. Like I've started to notice a little bit more where I might have just bought in completely, and I've tried to find like a little bit more truth behind like what's actually being put forward by the primary or whatever. But
by the Tea Party.
But yeah, by the Tea Party, the party that I am a voter of.
Yes.
Yeah.
You left your tricorner hat off stage.
Oh yeah, my musket and my tricorner hat are just over here. I will get them if you want me to.
Well, they're good over there.
They're good over there? All right.
We do have it. It's another one of those seminars. The muskets have to stay off stage. That was one of those.
You could probably fit the entire Tea Party in this room.
Yeah.
They're just louder than everybody else.
You think?
I think so.
Okay.
They're also
like putting angry comments on this chat now.
That entire political, it's like the YouTube comment section. It's like nobody should ever even be there. Nobody should ever look at it at all.
Yeah. It can be a little depressing for your view of, talk about cynical. Yeah. You don't want to go there. We do have some good questions from online readers who are using social media, and maybe YouTube. I don't know. But Sophia wants to know. This was Sophia Venegas. If you have to define your character, and you'll notice a common thread in most of these questions.
Okay.
If you have to define your character in one insult, what would it be?
That's a good one. I really like. There was one from last year that made me happy, and I think it was like Jonah with money. That's like if Hitler could fly.
Right.
I like that one. But I'm trying. There was also like the unstable piece of human scaffolding was a good one. Oh God! Whenever I get asked, I
Yeah.
always
I put a couple in the post. It was the face of what a sketch artist would draw of a rapist.
Oh yeah, no,
that
that's
was
a good one.
And there's so many that we can't really say here
Yeah.
on daytime.
I have the face, a guy with the face of a police sketch face
of
a rapist.
Yeah. You know what I love?
Which is weird because that's just my face. Like that's just my face. I don't have a different face than that.
Right.
So when the writers wrote that, they were thinking about my face.
Mhm.
So you can imagine being there that day and reading that and just having like a little bit of like,
right.
That's a little arrow you got to pull out.
I like the one where after, Patton Oswalt's character, he was having it turns out he was a serial groper. Mm-hmm. And they bring in all these women. They're doing a class action lawsuit, and you look just like all the middle-aged women, and you're very confused. That was another one the writers came up with.
I don't know who had it worse. Me being told that I had the face of a date rapist, or the women who came in who were all fantastic, who were being told they looked like me.
Yeah.
I don't know who had it worse in that situation.
Well, they had to have, okay. Yeah, their hair, I'm sure it was styled in
a little bit.
But yeah, so did you apologize afterward? And
I don't think we talked about it a lot. Like, I feel like you don't want to call attention to that too much in that moment.
Right.
You want to talk about it on a live stream
exactly.
a full year later. That's the way my family deals with things.
Good way. Maggie.
Thanks for all the support, Mom and Dad.
Margie on Twitter asks, is there an endearing quality in Jonah that you wish you had? That's a good little twist, though.
Yeah, that's a good twist.
What Jonah quality would you like in your own life?
Nothing keeps that guy down.
Right.
Like, I've had bad days before, and there have been sometimes where I'm like, you know what? Like, it's all done. It's all over. I'm garbage. You're trash. You're a fraud. You're going to get found out. And I've had some days where I'm like, I'm not doing it today. Like, and I don't think he ever has those. I think he might have that moment, but he pushes it out of his mind so quickly and he's just like, all right, cool. Back to it. Back to me. Back to my rise to power.
He gets off the mat very quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. We had one from Stephanie Taylor asking, have you ever come up with it? So this is, they're all insult related questions.
Okay, cool.
Well, not actually Margie's wasn't, but have you ever come up with a Jonah targeted insult? So it's not enough for the writers to, have you ever thought of ways to abuse Jonah yourself?
I think as far as my contributions to what gets thrown at him, I think like in rehearsals, I'm always like in that same way of reiterating that point of like, I don't want him to ever be fully sympathetic or redeemed in any way. Like, I'll always try to, in rehearsals, push it toward that direction. But as far as like direct insults, I don't know that I've come up with insults for Mike and Reed, or for Mike and Dan. I think at one point I called him Nancy Drew, and called Matt her little butt, like whatever Nancy Drew and your little butt sniffing dog, and I felt pretty good about that one. But I've never really come up with any good Jonah ones. But Reed came up with hepatitis J. He was the one that came up with hepatitis J. He just threw that into like as the opener in a scene, and I immediately blew that take. Like, immediately. He didn't tell me he was going to be doing it. I immediately broke and completely ruined that entire take. But I feel like, just before hepatitis J, one thing that I feel like, if I can pat myself on the back, one thing that I am good at is coming up with really sexually uncomfortable things to say in a moment. Just like, okay, well, we'll just get into the scene, we're just going to make something up here that gets us into the scene. I'm really good at coming up with really horribly uncomfortable sexual things. So maybe should I put that on a resume?
Yeah, skills.
Yeah, under special
That's a very
skills.
specialized skill.
Yeah.
that you have there. So that'll take you far in life, right? A question: if you could play any other character on the show, who would it be and why? So they're going to recast the show, just jumble it up. What would be the other?
I really like Kent and Ben. I think both, and that maybe is just because I like Gary Cole and Kevin Dunn so much.
Yeah.
I couldn't play either of those roles as well as they do, but just like their dynamic, especially together, especially the dynamic of those two characters together is phenomenal. And so I don't know. I think that would be really fun to play. Sort of like Kent's completely detached, numbers obsessed, like robot, and Ben is just all bluster, all rage, all like just raw emotion and fight. And I love the two of those guys together. When Ben has that amazing monologue when Reed is about to get fired, where you kind of see like the political animal he used to be before he just wanted to kill himself all the time. And he says, like, I will fucking end you, and I'm going to put my hand up your ass and make you into sock puppet, and my fingers are going to be out of your fucking eye sockets or whatever. It's that.
Yeah.
And Kent says something like, I cannot condone that statement, but I do acknowledge it. And it's like the perfect cap on Ben's speech to just be like, it's a perfect middle ground sentence. He didn't say anything at all, but it carried weight. I don't know. It was amazing.
Yeah. Does the show, we have another question, wondering about if they have to make any accommodations between, say, your height and Julia's, between you and the other actors. I mean, I think they use your height well in sort of a physical comedy sometimes aspect, right?
Yeah, it's not one of those things like we don't have an entire cast on Apple boxes. Like we don't have like a trail of Apple boxes just around the set. I think generally it's not something that comes up where it's like, you look too tall, please fix that. The only time that I've ever really seen it be addressed directly was that when we were first starting, if ever, like in the pilot, there's a scene where I think it's the first time that Julia and I are sort of face to face. I remember her taking off her shoes just to play that up even more, because it was going to be like a profile 2-shot of the two of us. So I remember her doing that, but since then, not as much. I'm just taller than most people, so you don't really need to play me taller. I'm just taller, you know? Yeah. And I think like in that sense, our show is also kind of like, it's shot messy, it's edited messy. It's not about creating like these beautiful, like perfectly lit one shot takes that it's kind of about the messiness. So
the chaos
of it all. So it wouldn't fit in our show to sort of like carefully gauge exactly how tall I am than anybody else. Our shots just aren't composed like that.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how this season ends.
Poorly.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
The show will end poorly, the season will end poorly, but that's what we want, right? That's what it should be. Thanks for coming in today.
Is that it? That's all? We're all done?
I think so, man.
All right, cool.
Unless you have some more, we could go into, what were you saying? The musket and the tri-corner hat.
Oh, you want me to get my musket and my tri-corner hat?
Is there time?
Yeah.
No, they're waving you off.
Well, all right, well, the next one.
All right. And for more of these conversations, go to latimes.com, click on television. You'll find a bunch. Thanks.